There is an excellent Twitter thread online that started a thought process and something I've kind of been cooking up for a little while on this channel, and I kind of wanted to go into a bit of detail about the way that Manchester United is being run, why things are bad right now, and that might be down to some recency bias, but it also kind of impacts where we project Manchester United will be because of that recency bias. There is also an interesting aspect of how Manchester United is currently doing on the pitch and how it's being run, but also the Swiss Ramble's excellent Twitter thread about how the Glazers run the club kind of illuminated so much more about what is actually going on at Manchester United. And so I wanted to just pick some of that apart and give them full credit, because if you go to that Twitter thread, you can read a lot of what I'm about to talk about here, but sure, hear it come out of someone's mouth would be much nicer, right? It's interesting to see the way Manchester United has been run, especially just pre-post-Ferguson and then post-Ferguson from the Glazers. And you realise what has gone on at this club since the Glazers took over, since 2005 at least. Now, I can't speak too much about the way Manchester United were before that, but we know this club got the hop on everyone else in the Premier League and essentially put their arms around being a commercial entity globally, but also domestically. And basically trying to get ahead of everyone else who went, whoa, that's not football. When Sky took over and everything went forward, Liverpool were left behind, plenty of other clubs were left behind because they didn't want to be part of that new commercial wave. Now, whether that's good or bad is a whole other argument, but it got Manchester United to this point where they're probably one of the biggest global sporting brands. I'm not arguing about whether they're bigger than anyone else or who's bigger than them or whatever, but what we can and what we do know as fact is they are a huge sporting brand globally, if not one of the biggest, alongside the Yankees and Real Madrid and, you know, the Lakers and all these other big brands. We know that. So when the Glazers took over, they also knew that back in 2005. And they knew that there were a lot of commercial opportunities. Ed Woodward himself, Iwa if you take out the D's, said on-pitch performance doesn't impact off the field commercial deals. Now, I think he was wrong to some extent, but the point he was making was this is such a huge global brand. There is something that surrounds Manchester United that we can sell. And it kind of shows the arrogance of the owners and the fact that they didn't really value what was going on the field at Manchester United enough, and actually how much they squandered at the club, how much of an opportunity here for the Glazers to capitalise has been squandered. And I'll go through why. Let me start. I'm just going to move you a little bit because I've got some good notes to one side. First of all, the Glazers took over in 2005. They leveraged a lot of debt against the club. I'm not going to judge the debt too much, but basically that debt hasn't increased or decreased. It's relatively remained the same. Now, there were other clubs in the Premier League who have also leveraged debt against the club, but that was one for Tottenham Hotspur to be able to redo their whole stadium. They felt very good about that, and it seems to be benefiting the club now. Two was Chelsea, but that was Abramovich's debt, and he took that debt on personally in order to leverage other things against the club, and clearly we've seen there are other political reasons to do that. So Manchester United and plenty of other clubs in the Premier League are in very unique positions. Every club chooses to run itself in its own way, if you like. I think a lot of people assume that football clubs are run in one way, and if you do it any other way, then something is wrong. But no, you kind of require unique financial models in order to make each club run. Manchester United in itself is very unique because they already had a big brand globally when they were taken over, and other people have come into smaller clubs, taken them, and then made them even bigger. The same model kind of applies with United, but the fact is the Glazers have squandered their opportunity. It's kind of fascinating when you look at it. I'm just going to read some of this off. They leverage huge debt against the club, profits have been taken out, and the amount of money that has left the club and is estimated to have gone to the Glazers amounts to 1.1 billion. Just let that sink in for a second. 1.1 billion. Newcastle United were bought for almost a third of that. And Chelsea were bought for almost a little bit more than double that. But that's gone out to the Glazers directly, not as debt, not as anything else, but to the Glazers. In multiple different forms, by the way. There are 6 of their members on the 12-person Manchester United board. So we can estimate that every time there were certain amounts of money that, I don't want to call them dividends, but you know what I mean, that sort of thing went out onto the board, if 50% of that may have gone to the Glazers. It's a reasonable assumption to assume that. And then the way they've run the club. Let's talk about, because a lot of people at this point, and this was a great point made in the Swiss Rambles thread, and to some extent they've helped script a lot of what I'm saying here, and I wasn't smart enough or well-resourced enough in order to go and do this, so go and take a look at that. But what they basically say is, Manchester United, whilst they have invested a lot behind Chelsea and City, and ahead of other clubs, I think it's 1.4, almost 1.5 billion over the last few years, because of the lack of infrastructure that the Glazers didn't invest in, for instance, training ground facilities, the stadium, player resource, those kind of things, they squandered each of those opportunities because they didn't put the money that came out back into the club. It's not about, oh, well, relative to City, relative to Chelsea, they put this much in. If you buy an incredible Lamborghini and then you park it in a place that's covered in gravel and there's mud everywhere, every time you drive that Lamborghini out, you're going to scratch the car. There may be stones that go up into the motor. There may be, when you're driving down the street, people are going to go, that car's scratched, that's dirty. Why are they running that Lamborghini like that? And that's a great analogy as to where Manchester United are now, because there are loads of people who will go to West London and go, look at that Ferrari, look at that Lamborghini, look at this. Manchester United should be in West London. That's the rich part of town, by the way. That's the part I'm going to call the Champions League. And believe me, there are lots of other lovely parts of London, but what I mean by that is that's where all the money is. So commercially, it works. But they're not there. They're driving around other parts of London trying to get people to look at their car. But the fact is, less people are interested in your car in other parts of London because they're having to just survive to get along. That's the Europa League, by the way. And just slightly below, the Europa Conference League, those kind of things. That's where Manchester United are now. And sure, their commercial operations have almost tripled and tripled. That's impressive since the Glazers came in. But can they really take that much credit for that? Because they've also stagnated over and after the last 5 years. So with that, whilst they did get a lot of great commercial deals in, on-field success didn't reflect that, unless they were under Sir Alex Ferguson. And really, we know why that was. That was Sir Alex Ferguson, especially if you look at the teams. For a while, I think they thought that the money would be atheist of that and that it wouldn't really impact what was going on at the team. But now it's beginning to do so. The Chevrolet deal on the front of the shirt that you see out on the pitch has now become a TeamViewer deal. It's lower with TeamViewer than it is with Chevrolet. But to some extent that was all right because they also had a deal with Tezos off the field, which was the training stuff. And then they also had Adidas, which was 75 million. The interesting aspect is if they don't qualify for the Champions League this season, Adidas can reduce that deal by up to 30% is what I'm told. So whilst these guys are busy saying that there is a lot of success at the club, and sure, to all intents and purposes, existing at this elite level in any capacity is a success, the club were already primed for that. In someone else's hands, this club would not only be primed for that, they would actually be capitalizing on that, and you would be able to sell this club for more than the 3 to 5 billion that Manchester United are projected to sell for. I remember people talking when they first took over about in however many years' time the Glazers could sell for 8 to 10 million. We were thinking about these being the equivalent of an NBA franchise, an NFL franchise, which of course the Glazers also have owned. So within that, whilst a lot of people and Glazer protectors or Glazer apologists might say, hey, these guys have been doing pretty good, they've actually underperformed where you would have thought they would go. And so that is why when you see Erik ten Hag come in, he is hamstrung from the minute he comes in. Sure, I've criticised Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, I've criticised Mourinho, I've criticised Van Gaal, I've criticised every manager who's come through the door because they have had financial resources. But at the same time, you can temper each of those criticisms with, well, the resource and the infrastructure at the club underserved every one of these managers, and we knew it. So sure, down the years, we have been able to criticise Manchester United, and at times, it's been fun to watch as an opposition fan. Watching your own club be run relatively well and have lots of investment, which has gone very far to win Premier League titles, is fantastic to watch. Of course, it's competition in the league. But then you think about, and let me read this, the Glazers are paying themselves to do a job that others could do better. The Glazers paid themselves consultancy fees. And when they sold almost, I want to say 400 to 500 million pounds worth of Class A shares, and I'll quote here, The club received nothing from that. I'm a Liverpool fan and I'm furious about that. Because, by the way, this is very similar to, well, when they came for you, when they came for, you know, whoever. There's the analogy of when the Nazis came for those people and they speak about, well, when they came for them, I didn't speak because, you know, when they came for them, I didn't speak. But when they came for me, who spoke up for me? It's a similar concept in the Premier League. It's all well and good laughing and getting this banter, and sure, that is satisfying in the moment, in the short term. But in the long term, if we don't speak up as fans, together, as a body, it'll end up being you. It'll end up being you that gets sold to the owners who treat you awfully. It'll end up being you who isn't happy with your owners, who has to work out whether your owners are doing the right thing, morally, financially, all these things. It'll end up being you who is apologizing for billionaires who benefit off your club. The heritage that you took from your dad or your mum or your grandfather or your grandmother or your sister or your brother, whoever, the things that you shared and the ideas that you have, non-existent when you have an owner who you have to apologize for. Or at least they're less relevant because your owner makes them less relevant. And you have to get excited over little Twitter threads from Elon Musk at 1 a.m, which you wake up to, and sure, there's loads of jokes about the jetpacks that are going to get fitted onto players and whatever, and it is funny in a postmodernist sort of hyper-capitalistic sense, but it's not funny actually, is it? Sort of actually a terrible joke. So, that's why, as a Liverpool fan, I think I worry a little bit when Sir Jim Ratcliffe, who seems to be running Nice relatively well, who I think owns, he owns another club as well. Let me actually take a look at that. What else does he own? He owns, he owns a Swiss team as well, FC Lausanne Sport. Lausanne Sport? Correct me, my pronunciation is terrible. But he also owns essentially what is a chemical company that also then own F1 teams, cycling teams, sailing teams, football teams, rugby teams, and they do challenges. So these guys aren't new to sport, should we say, aren't new to being able to network and link with other people. These are exactly the kind of people you would want to own your club. And sure, it's a consortium, which he will lead. And there are other consortiums, which include the Dubai royal family and small-time celebrities and people who've always had an interest in Manchester United. Maybe even Cristiano Ronaldo is involved in one of those. So it means that what I'm saying is if Manchester United get taken over by any of these people, whilst the Glazers have run it like that commercially, they've done very well to triple the commercial prospects. The commercial prospects are possibly tenfold where they're at right now, or tenfold where the Glazers were when they took over. And that's scary as an opposition fan, because if this club's being run badly right now and they're barely missing out on top four, imagine what happens when they're well run. They have a stadium that fans actually want to go to. They have infrastructure, because by the way, when I went to the Manchester United executive suite, the carpets were bad. The food was good, the staff were lovely, and the people were all very nice, and they had all the Manchester United legends. They did a lot of the good things, but they were behind other clubs. I'd been to other clubs, to hospitality, Spurs, Liverpool, AC Milan, Juventus. Manchester United were behind every one of those. How? They're bigger than each of those clubs, or at least equivalent size. No, in fact, I don't care if I upset you as a fan base. Manchester United are bigger than each of those clubs. Liverpool, Manchester United are bigger than them commercially. They make more money than them. Maybe globally there are a lot of people love them. But the point is, what's going on at Manchester United right now, and the stagnance may be down to their owners waiting to sell. Sure, they're getting Casemiro for however many million. That is a drop in the ocean compared to what they could be investing. So think about that. Again, they're not getting the best squeeze for the amount of lemon they're putting in. Life gave them lemonade, and they're making lemons out of Manchester United fans, apparently. I didn't script that, but it was an excellent piece of riffing. The point is, I don't even need to talk about Erik ten Hag. Sure, the players aren't happy with him, and I can cover that right now. The players aren't happy with his training methods. Ronaldo's not happy with the way that he is punishing him for not doing the right things on the field. Some of the players feel that they are too senior. They're leaking things to the press, and that is a problem. But you know what? If you had an ownership who actually backed their manager, and you had players, and you had a resource for the manager to be able to bring in new players, you didn't just have some scattergun financial approach, which includes Asmir Begovic, possibly Casemiro, who by the way is 31, coming into the Premier League, has no Premier League experience, is a fantastic player, but is unproven so far in the league. And you then say to Ronaldo and his clique, his faction, whoever it is that's leaking this stuff to the press, yeah, we understand that, but we don't need you anymore. Thank you. In fact, Ronaldo wouldn't even be at the club if this club was well run right now. And if he was at the club, he wouldn't be in this position, because you know what? No ownership should let their players leverage like this. So, I don't know why I'm so passionate about this. I kind of feel like Manchester United fans have been screwed here. And I get it, like the Twitter banter's brilliant, right? But the Glazers have run this club terribly. And I kind of feel like a consortium should come in the next 12 to 24 months. Apparently that's true. It's just bizarre though, when you think about it. The Glazers had an opportunity to make this one of the most lucrative opportunities in sporting history. And sure, maybe we blame COVID for this, but even during COVID, this club was more solid than so many other clubs globally. Even coming out of COVID, they haven't recovered in the way they could. So as Erik ten Hag is struggling in an almost AVB-like fashion, by the way. Do you remember AVB when he came in at Chelsea? When the task was weed out all these other people, move the club forward, bring in a new style of football, make it more attractive, and suddenly the players went, nope, we're good, we'll keep it here for now. Sure, they went on to have more success afterwards, and maybe that's good for Manchester United, but the point is, you can't keep trying to have this revolution and let people hold it back. Maybe Ronaldo does go to Dortmund. You take away some of the power from some of the players there. Maybe the players are too powerful. Maybe if you had a manager and you had an institution that people begged and wanted to be a part of, the methods would fit the club. And you know what? People make the methods fit the club. He makes me run laps after training. I do it because I love the club. These two things don't align right now. And fans deserve better. So let me know in the comments below, what do you think comes of Manchester United? Does the takeover impact them this season? And how does Casemiro play when he ultimately plays for the club? I'll be interested to know in the comments below. They will be making some more signings, but it's going to be really bizarre. Will those signings fit? And how much longer can they keep the club coasting like this until someone does come in, take over, and take them back to the Champions League? Because when they do, there's a huge amount of commercial possibility, potential there. See you guys in another video. Really good to chat. Much love. Bye.